Close your eyes for a second and think back to your childhood. Remember coming home from school, throwing your backpack down and rushing to turn on Nickelodeon? That iconic sound, those unforgettable theme songs that you probably still know every word to. There was a man behind all of that magic, a musical genius who shaped the soundtrack of an entire generation's childhood. His name was Guy Moon, and on January 10th, 2026, at just 63 years old, his life was cut tragically short in a devastating car crash in California. But here's what most people don't know. Guy Moon wasn't just another composer. He was the architect of some of the most iconic sounds in television history, and his story is one that deserves to be told. So who exactly was Guy Moon? Before we get into the heartbreaking details of what happened, we need to understand just how influential this man really was. Guy Moon wasn't a household name, and that was kind of the point. He worked behind the scenes, crafting the audio landscapes that millions of kids grew up with, probably without ever knowing his name. Born in 1962, Guy Moon dedicated his entire life to music. He wasn't chasing fame or trying to be the next big pop star. Instead, he found his calling in something much more specific and, honestly, much more impactful: creating music for children's television. And not just any children's television, we're talking about Nickelodeon during its absolute golden era. Think about this for a second. When you hear the words Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, what happens? You probably immediately hear that funky, energetic theme song in your head, right? That was Guy Moon. When someone mentions The Fairly Odd Parents, you can probably sing along to that bouncy, magical theme without even trying. That was Guy Moon, too. Ned's Declassified, The Fairly Odd Parents, and so many other shows that defined Nickelodeon in the 2000s, they all had one thing in common, and that was Guy Moon's musical fingerprint. But here's what makes his work so special. Creating music for kids' shows isn't easy. You're not just writing a catchy tune. You need to capture the essence of the entire show in like 30 seconds. You need to make it memorable enough that kids will remember it decades later, but not so annoying that parents lose their minds hearing it on repeat. You need to set the tone, establish the energy, and make kids excited about what they're about to watch. Guy Moon mastered this art form in a way that very few people ever have. He understood that these theme songs weren't just background noise. They were the gateway into these fictional worlds. They were the signal that it was time to laugh, time to escape, time to be a kid. And he took that responsibility seriously. Every note, every beat, every instrument choice was deliberate and purposeful. Beyond just theme songs, Guy Moon also composed the background music, the incidental scores that played during the actual episodes. You know those moments in The Fairly Odd Parents, where Timmy makes a wish and something goes hilariously wrong? The music that builds up the comedy, that punctuates the jokes, that makes the magical moments feel even more magical. That was all Guy Moon. He was essentially creating thousands of tiny musical moments that enhanced every single scene. Now let's talk about what happened on January 10th, 2026. It was a Friday, just a regular day in California. Guy Moon was 63 years old, still active, still creating, still contributing to the world of music, and then, in an instant, everything changed. According to reports from the California Highway Patrol, Guy Moon was involved in a serious car crash. The details that emerged paint a picture of just how sudden and devastating this accident was. It wasn't a minor fender bender or a close call. This was a collision serious enough to claim the life of a man who had brought so much joy to millions of people. The crash occurred in California, though the exact location and specific circumstances are still being investigated by authorities. What we do know is that the impact was severe enough that despite whatever emergency response was provided, Guy Moon did not survive. He was pronounced dead at the scene or shortly after, ending a life that had been dedicated to creativity and bringing happiness to children around the world. When the news first broke, it started quietly. A few people in the entertainment industry began sharing the information on social media. Then, as word spread, there was this wave of shock and grief that rippled through the animation and music communities. People who had worked with Guy Moon began posting tributes. Voice actors from the shows he'd worked on expressed their condolences. And then, regular people, adults now, who had grown up watching these shows, started sharing their memories. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, everywhere you looked, people were processing this loss. And here's what was so striking about it. Most of these people had never met Guy Moon. They didn't know him personally. But they felt like they'd lost something important because in a very real way they had. They'd lost the person who had soundtracked some of the happiest moments of their childhood. One particularly emotional aspect of this story is thinking about the timing. Guy Moon was only 63. In the grand scheme of things, that's relatively young, especially for someone in a creative field. He potentially had decades more of work ahead of him. There were probably countless more theme songs he could have written, countless more kids he could have brought joy to. And all of that potential was wiped out in a single moment on a California road. The investigation into the crash is ongoing, and as is typical with these situations, authorities are being careful about releasing too many details too quickly. They need to piece together exactly what happened, whether there were other vehicles involved, what the road conditions were like, whether any factors like speed or distraction played a role. These investigations can take weeks or even months to complete fully. For Guy Moon's family, friends, and colleagues, those details might eventually provide some answers, but they won't change the fundamental reality. A talented man, a creative force, a husband, a father, a friend. He's gone. And the suddenness of it makes it even harder to process. When news of Guy Moon's death spread across the internet, something beautiful happened. People started really examining his work, perhaps for the first time with full appreciation. Sure, everyone knew the theme songs, but how many people had actually stopped to think about who created them? Social media became flooded with clips of his work. People were posting the Ned's Declassified theme song, the Fairly Odd Parents opening, and sharing their memories. One person tweeted, "I literally didn't know Guy Moon's name until today, but his music has been in my head for 20 years. Another wrote, "This man created the soundtrack to my entire childhood and I never even knew he existed. Rest in peace to a legend." The voice actors from the shows he worked on were particularly affected. These were people who had spent years working alongside Guy Moon's music, who had timed their performances to his compositions, who had seen firsthand the care and creativity he put into every project. Their tributes spoke to not just his talent, but his character as a person. Industry professionals in the animation and music world also chimed in, many of them emphasizing just how difficult it is to do what Guy Moon did. Composing for children's television is its own unique challenge, and he was one of the absolute best at it. He had this rare ability to create music that was sophisticated enough to be genuinely good music, while also being accessible and fun enough for kids to love. But perhaps the most touching tributes came from regular people, now in their 20s and 30s, who grew up with these shows. They talked about rushing home from school to catch Ned's Declassified. They remembered pretending to have fairy godparents after watching The Fairly Odd Parents. They shared stories about how these shows got them through tough times, made them laugh when they needed it, taught them lessons about friendship and perseverance. And underlying all of that was Guy Moon's music. It was the constant thread. It set the mood, it enhanced the jokes, it made the magical moments feel more magical, and the emotional moments hit harder. He was, in many ways, an invisible collaborator in all of these childhood memories. The music industry lost a true craftsman. This wasn't someone chasing chart-topping hits or Grammy Awards, though his work certainly deserved recognition. This was someone who found fulfillment in serving a specific audience, children, and doing it with excellence and integrity. That's increasingly rare in any creative field. Let's take a step back and really think about what Guy Moon's work meant in the larger context of television and culture. Theme songs might seem like a small thing, just a 30-second intro that you could skip if you wanted to. But they're actually incredibly important, especially for kids' shows. Think about how theme songs function psychologically. For a child, that theme song is a signal. It tells them that for the next 22 minutes or whatever, they get to enter a different world. It's a transition from the real world into the fictional one. It builds anticipation and excitement. And when that theme song is really good, it becomes something kids will sing around the house, something that gets stuck in their heads, something that burrows into their memory and stays there for life. Guy Moon understood this intuitively. His theme songs weren't just catchy, they were perfectly calibrated to the shows they represented. The Fairly Odd Parents theme is bouncy and magical, with this whimsical quality that perfectly captures the show's premise about a kid with fairy godparents. Ned's Declassified theme is energetic and slightly chaotic, matching the fast-paced, advice-filled nature of the show. But beyond just the theme songs, his background scoring work was equally important. Good background music in a comedy doesn't draw attention to itself, but it's absolutely essential. It builds up to punchlines, it underscores emotional beats, it helps with pacing. Guy Moon's work did all of this masterfully. There's also something to be said about the era he worked in. The early to mid-2000s was a golden age for Nickelodeon. The network was producing innovative, creative shows that pushed boundaries and took risks. Guy Moon was part of that creative ecosystem, working alongside talented writers, animators, and performers to create something special. His music was a key ingredient in what made that era so memorable. And here's something else worth considering. Guy Moon's music has outlived its original context. Kids who are growing up today, who weren't even born when some of these shows originally aired, are discovering them through streaming services and YouTube. And when they watch The Fairly Odd Parents or Ned's Declassified, they're hearing Guy Moon's music. His work is still introducing itself to new audiences, still bringing joy, still doing exactly what it was designed to do. Let's talk specifically about what Guy Moon accomplished in his career. While The Fairly Odd Parents and Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide are probably his most well-known works, his resume was extensive and varied. The Fairly Odd Parents ran for 10 seasons, from 2001 to 2017, making it one of Nickelodeon's longest-running series. Guy Moon's theme song played at the beginning of hundreds of episodes, and his incidental music was woven throughout the entire series. That's over a decade of consistent work on a single show, maintaining quality and creativity the entire time. Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide ran from 2004 to 2007 and became a cultural phenomenon. Kids didn't just watch it, they quoted it, they followed its advice, they related to the characters and their middle school struggles. And that theme song became iconic. Even now, if you play it for someone who watched the show, they'll immediately recognize it and probably start singing along. But beyond these flagship shows, Guy Moon worked on numerous other Nickelodeon properties and projects throughout his career. He was part of the Nickelodeon family, a trusted collaborator who could be counted on to deliver exactly what was needed for each unique project. What's interesting is that Guy Moon managed to create a consistent body of work without becoming repetitive. Each of his theme songs has its own distinct personality. You would never confuse the Fairly Odd Parents theme with the Ned's Declassified theme. They're completely different in tone, instrumentation, and energy. That shows real versatility and creativity. He was also working during a time of transition in how people consumed television. These shows originally aired on cable TV, with kids watching at scheduled times. But then they moved to DVD, then to streaming services, then to YouTube clips. Through all of these format changes, Guy Moon's music remained a constant, proving its timeless quality. In terms of recognition, Guy Moon might not have shelves full of Emmy Awards or Grammy trophies, though his work certainly deserved such accolades. But he had something perhaps more valuable, the genuine love and appreciation of millions of people whose childhoods he enriched. That's a legacy that transcends awards. Guy Moon's story, and particularly the tragic way it ended, offers us some important things to reflect on. First and foremost, it reminds us of the fragility of life. Here was a man at 63, still presumably healthy and active, still contributing to his field, and in one moment everything changed. It's a stark reminder that we're never guaranteed tomorrow, that life can be cut short without warning. It also highlights something we often forget in our celebrity-obsessed culture. Some of the most important and influential people are ones we've never heard of. Guy Moon wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't on magazine covers or giving acceptance speeches at award shows, but he touched more lives than most celebrities ever will. He created something that brought genuine joy to millions of people. This raises an important question. How many other Guy Moons are out there? How many talented people are working behind the scenes, creating things we love, enriching our lives in ways we don't even realize? And how often do we take the time to appreciate them, to learn their names, to acknowledge their contributions? There's also a lesson here about the power of art and creativity. Guy Moon spent his career writing what some people might dismiss as just kids' music, or just TV theme songs. But think about the impact that work has had. Those theme songs are deeply embedded in the memories of an entire generation. They evoke powerful feelings of nostalgia, of childhood, of simpler times. That's not trivial. That's profound. The outpouring of grief when Guy Moon died demonstrates something important about how we connect with art. People weren't just mourning the loss of a composer, they were mourning the loss of a piece of their childhood, of someone who had been present in their lives in this intimate but invisible way. His music was the soundtrack to their formative years, and losing him felt personal even to people who had never met him. For those of us still here, still creating or consuming or living our lives, Guy Moon's story is a call to appreciate the present moment. It's a reminder to value the people who make our lives better, even if they do so from the shadows. It's an encouragement to create meaningful work that will outlive us, that will bring joy to others, that will matter. Guy Moon's death on January 10th, 2026, marked the end of a life dedicated to bringing joy to children through music. At just 63 years old, he left behind a legacy that will continue to resonate for generations. Every time a kid discovers The Fairly Odd Parents for the first time and hears that magical theme song, Guy Moon's work lives on. Every time someone in their 20s or 30s hears the Ned's Declassified theme and is transported back to their childhood, Guy Moon's impact is felt. He may not have been famous in the traditional sense, but his influence is undeniable. He shaped the sound of an entire era of children's television. He created music that has literally been heard by hundreds of millions of people across the world. He did work that mattered, that brought happiness, that made childhood a little bit brighter for countless kids. The circumstances of his death, sudden, unexpected, and far too soon, make this loss even more poignant. It reminds us that the people who create the things we love are real human beings with real lives, and we should appreciate them while we can. So here's my question for you. What's your Guy Moon memory? What show did you grow up watching that had his music? Can you still sing the theme song? Do you remember rushing home from school to catch your favorite Nickelodeon show? Drop a comment below and share your memories. Let's create a digital memorial where we celebrate the work of this incredibly talented man who gave so much to so many, and maybe, just maybe, take a moment today to appreciate the people who work behind the scenes in your life. The composers, the editors, the designers, the countless talented individuals who make the things you love possible. Learn their names. Acknowledge their work. Because people like Guy Moon deserve to be remembered and celebrated, not just in death, but in life. Rest in peace, Guy Moon. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for making childhood a little more magical for millions of us. You may be gone, but your work will live on forever. If this video resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, and drop a comment below sharing your favorite Guy Moon theme song or your memories of the shows he worked on. Let's keep his legacy alive together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.